Okay guys, as I promised you in Saturday's review video, I will be doing 3 more pieces of content based around the Tomb World box set. That'll be 1 video for each of the kill teams inside of it and 1 for the bespoke scenery that is from this set. We're going to be kicking off that in today's video with the awesome new Deathwatch. Now, not only will this video show you guys how to paint up one of the Deathwatch miniatures very easily and very accessibly, but also at the end I'm going to show you the size comparison between the old Deathwatch miniatures and the new Deathwatch miniatures, and talk to you about whether I think the kind of parts are going to work and be interchangeable, or whether you can convert them, or how they're going to work like that, or whether you're just going to have to scrap all the old ones and get new ones. So we won't know that until the very end, so do stick around. Before I get into it though, a huge thank you to all of my active patrons and channel members. Without you guys, I literally could not continue doing what I'm doing, so bottom of my heart, thank you guys so much. If you're interested in checking that out for yourself, it's linked down below. You get access to a private Discord server, you get access to an extra video every single week, and a bunch of extra content like painting competitions and all sorts of other things in there. So it's well worth checking out. Also, please do make sure that you like the video, comment if you have any questions, and make sure you subscribe. Those 3 things cost you nothing, but they make a huge difference to how many people see this video and how quickly the channel grows. Thank you guys so much for listening to that little ramble. Then let's dive in, get this model painted up. Okay, so this is the Deathwatch veteran that I've chosen to use for this video. It is the sergeant, or at least a sergeant of one of the 2 kill teams. There's 2 5-man kill teams that I like to break it up as for these particular things. Give them an Imperial Fist shoulder pad, because Imperial Fist should lead everything all the time ever, because they're the best Space Marines. Don't ever question me on that. And the model got sprayed black and then gets sprayed with kind of like a heavy zenithal of Grey Seer. I have a whole video on how I do my spraying, so if anyone's curious, it is linked down below in the description. You can go check that video out yourself. But then after that, we moved over to Black Templar and started blocking in the armor panels on this model. It is a kind of technique that I like to do when I'm painting models that are kind of a darker or flatter color, like black. I mean, a lot of people would consider just starting the model by spraying black and then working up from there. If you're not going to want to do kind of a lot of edge highlighting or a lot of work to try and put a lot of depth into the black, this technique will give you that result with, I feel, a lot less effort. It also allows the rest of the miniature, as you can see, I was quite careful when I was applying my Black Templar, which left the rest of the model having all of its kind of parts in still the nice bright gray, which means I can throw other contrast over different areas of the model, and it's going to work a treat. Whereas if I went with black, I would then have to build up all the base coats and everything else, which would take longer. So this is definitely, in my opinion, a much faster technique for getting the model done. So once I got all the Black Templar where it was supposed to go, I moved in with Lead Belcher and blocked in that traditional arm of the Deathwatch. So they all have traditional Deathwatch full silver left arm with the Inquisition shoulder pad matched in. And then they're allowed to keep their right shoulder pad their own iconography. Now, in this particular video, I'm not going to worry about showing you how to paint Imperial Fist shoulder pad. I don't think that's productive, as there's about 400,000 shoulder pads in this box set for you to choose. And obviously, I'm not going to go through each and every one of them. No, I've done a video on most of those chapters for now, actually. So if you are curious on how to paint a Raptor shoulder pad or a Brazen Claw or whatever, there's a video somewhere on my channel about it. So I'm sure you can cover most of them. I used some Blood Angels red contrast for the few details. So first off, the casing on his plasma pistol. Obviously, if it's a different Deathwatch model, it's going to have some form of gun usually. So the casing of that gun will be done in red. I also decided to do the handle of his power sword in red, and then some of the cabling coming off the kind of servo skull, and I did the sheath off his combat blade and some detail on his back, just to break up all the different black sections of the model a little bit. After that, Wildwood was used for any of the leather things, so i.e. pouches, pistol holsters, or anything like that, you can do with that. Skeleton Horde was then used for a few things. Obviously, all of the parchment for his purity seals got done with that. I also decided to go for blonde color for hair. It's quite a common hair color for Imperial Fists, for Sons of Dorn. So I decided to follow through and do it on his hair as well. Now, funny enough, I actually have quite a large Deathwatch army myself, but I flipped this scheme on its head when I did mine. And I was very tempted to follow through with that for this video, but I decided, no, I better show you the traditional way of painting Deathwatch, because I believe it makes the most sense. But my one is, whatever chapter it's from, they retain that scheme. They still have the silver Deathwatch shoulder pad and the silver left arm. But then, for instance, if this was for my personal army, he would be an Imperial Fist from top to toe then, and all the other kind of sections. Volupus Pink was then used for some of the wax seals on the Purity. Okay, so we were getting there with the kind of base coats. Last thing we need to do is just block in the other metallics. So we're going to go for gold. And obviously all the Inquisition eye symbols that exist across this model need to get blocked in. So center of the chest, center of the shoulder pad. And then there's a couple of like honorific stuff hanging from chains and stuff. So just take your time and make sure each and every one of these Deathwatch miniatures will have unique stuff like this on the medals and charms and bolter insignias and, you know, marksman's honors and all that kind of stuff. So please do make sure you do get all of those and block them in with the gold. There's even things like laurel leaf symbols, which I originally thought would be in green and stuff, but it's all in gold as well. So block that all in. From here, we're going into Nuln Oil and we're going to shade down the entire miniature. Every single bit of the model is going to get shaded fully with Nuln Oil. This is going to add a really nice kind of color into the recesses of the armor. And it does absolute wonders for all of the metallics, both gold and silver parts across this model. It's going to shade down that plasma pistol really nicely. And basically it's going to give us a really nice base coat for doing some layering on this miniature. Like I said, we don't have to go crazy with the amount of layering, but just a little bit will be nice and make the model pop. So this is it as the shade is dried. I've also gone for a very muted gray base for this model. And basically the same kind of tone I went for my Leagues of Votan. I don't know if it's the color scheme I will kind of stick with the basing scheme, but for now, obviously this guy's going to be fighting through a tomb complex, so I didn't want any like lush greens or Martian bases. I didn't want to stand out too much from that. Okay, one of my favorite things to do with black armor now is that simple, very quick layering process where we just jump up to Corvus Black. Corvus Black is one of my favorite colors. It is such a gem. And if you do not have it and do not use it in your painting, I thoroughly recommend the next time you're in your local independent or in a Warhammer store to pick up a pot of this. It's what I use to layer up all of the blacks that I do across the army, whether it be on armor panels or whether it be on kind of leather buckles or whether it be on anything. It's just black with a touch of gray in it and it works a treat. Your eye still registers it as black, but it's obviously just a shade brighter. And then obviously this is where people would go in and spend a lot of time edge highlighting. And if that's your thing, please do feel free to do that. But if I'm trying to get an entire kill team done in kind of a couple of hours or a day or two, then steps like this will slow that whole process down. So what I love to do is grab a little bit of sponge left over from any packaging or old cases or anything like that. Load it up with some silver paint, wipe off kind of 95% of it. So it's leaving a very small amount of silver behind. And then basically stippling it across all of the black armor, adding little bits of chipping and weathering to that. It's so quick to do, but it adds so much depth into the armor. I'm telling you, it works a treat. From here, we're going to jump up and layer the plasma pistol very quickly, an Evil Sun's Scarlet, and then a Wild Rider Red, tongue twisted there, to make those colors pop. And we're going to keep going through kind of different areas of the miniature, just blocking in those colors and getting them highlighted. Now, I believe it's time we start talking a little bit about the comparison between the old Deathwatch kill team sets and the new Deathwatch kill team sets, and is there any kind of comparability between the two? And honestly, my assessment after I took out a bunch of models from my old Deathwatch army and I was kind of holding them up to this guy, it is night and day as goes the size comparison. Obviously, the original Deathwatch were mark kind of like the older pre-Primaris Marine style models, so they are very, very small. Their proportions look a little bit goofy next to these kind of larger scale miniatures. I will kind of have some in hand in a moment and I will show you them kind of side by side so you can see for yourself, but I don't think anything is very transferable between the two, except for perhaps shoulder pads and helmets. They have said previously that it's built into the design function of Primaris Marines that the shoulder pads and heads are the same scale as the older Marines. So if you did have an old box of Deathwatch veterans, there's probably a whole ton of other Space Marine chapters that they didn't carry across into the new veterans, which would be super helpful for building like an entire army. Other than that, I don't think there's much use. I don't like, now that I've held them side by side, I have no inclination or wish to put my old models on the table. I just want to do a bunch of the newer versions of them because they stand out so much. They look so good on a tabletop. I've always had kind of strong feelings towards Primaris Marines. I know some people don't like the story of them or whatever, and that's totally fine. I don't agree with you. I love the story of Primaris Marines and how that all works. But aesthetically, I don't think there can be much of an argument as to like the improvements that have come from the larger scale miniatures. Back in the day, you'd put a Cadian next to a Marine and they'd be the same size, and that always bugged me. Now you put a Primaris Marine next to a Cadian and he towers head and shoulders above you, much broader, much bulkier, and they have that kind of presence on the battlefield, being adept as Astartes. And obviously they wanted to follow that through with the Deathwatch, and I think they've done a fantastic job with it. You can, of course, I'm sure, take any single-handed weapons from the old veteran kit as well. Some like crazy weapons, the Xenophage blades and stuff like that. Some of the old Gladiuses will, of course, carry through and fit okay, but I don't think any of the dual wielding, I don't think the arms are going to be the same width from shoulder to shoulder across for you to stick any of those kind of parts on. So I don't think any frag cannons can be stolen from older kits and used on newer guys. There is frag cannons on the new kits, don't worry about that. There's the combi frag cannons with the flamer built in. It's so cool looking. So I think there's been a couple of improvements made. Obviously heavy bolters and stuff are also in there, and a whole host of different weapons. So I'd love to honestly get my hands on like 6 boxes of these guys and try and make 30 unique miniatures, because I think you probably could make about 30 unique Space Marines. I like that they also gave us different shoulder pads for aggressors and for some of the kind of scouter variants as well. That was a nice touch. I know the kill team comes with those in it, obviously, but having all the excess ones means you can throw 3 aggressors into your army and have shoulder pads to fit them and match and stuff, which I just think is a really nice touch. So I'm quite pleased with that. I'd love to know your thoughts and feelings on the black armor as well. Like I said, I've always been kind of had an aversion to the full black armor of Deathwatch. Does it look kind of dull, or does it look kind of interesting or exciting? Like my brain was screaming at me at this point to add snow to the base, just to break up all of the dark colors. Such a dark base, such a dark model. And like I said, I would love to have painted this guy as a full Imperial Fist, bar the silver shoulder pad and arm, but I don't think it would have suited you guys. Alright, so this is the finished result. My first new Primaris Deathwatch veteran, ready to obviously storm the new Tomb World complex, fight Necrons, get to the key objectives, destroy or disable them, and try and make their way out with his 9 brethren. I'm really happy with the result. Hopefully you guys learned a few things about painting Deathwatch armory in like a quick and effective manner. I'd love to know what your thoughts and feelings are on the way that I painted this guy down in the comments below. And as a side-by-side premise, obviously the guy on the right, I tried to make them taller back in the day by putting them on cork. So when I lower him down to his actual height, you can see the kind of staggering difference between the two models. How much bigger he is. Obviously this guy has a shield, so it kind of adds a little bit more presence to him, makes him stand out a little bit more. But when you see them from like behind and stuff, it's quite staggering, the difference. But once again, I'd love to know your thoughts. What do you think of the older Marines versus the newer Marines side by side? Do you think they're usable? Would you try and use them? Or do you think it's look at the difference from the back? Like, it's actually insane. Obviously, I think I've come along in painting quite a long way since I painted that original Deathwatch army. So do apologize for the not great scheme on the left there. And hopefully you're happier with the scheme on the right. Okay, with the guy finally finished and finally out of the way, the last thing that I always do to protect and keep all my miniatures safe, as you guys know, I have quite a large collection of models, and it takes quite a while to keep them all organized and safe. So I'm now getting into the routine that whenever I fully finish a model, I add my Warmag basing magnet to the bottom, and I get a case ready to store this guy. So I'll probably I've got 3 cases now, I think, with all of my kill teams in it. They're actually full, so I now need to get another box ready for the next wave of kill team models coming out and keep them all together. I'm actually quite a big fan of kill teams, so I like keeping the kill teams as just kill teams as opposed to having them fit in with armies, which I know you can do, but that's just me. So obviously got them secured, put in a Warmag case, put aside. I'm ready to move on to the next project. Got a couple of still images to finish off this paint job. Give you guys an example of what he might look like on the tabletop. Hopefully you enjoyed it. And I will see you guys for the rest of the videos for this Kill Team Tomb World box set. Like I said, the Necron himself will get done and one of the scenery pieces. So hopefully you stick around for those.